Welcome to Innovation Tales, your go-to podcast for the human side of digital transformation.
Hello, and welcome to a new episode of Innovation Tales. Every day we hear about the increasing pace of technological change, but what does it take to keep one's skills current? And what can leaders do to help the people in their organizations stay up to date? I discuss these questions and more with today's guest, Diane Smith-Knowles, a partner success technical lead at Pegasystems with nearly 2 decades of experience in the digital process automation space. Listen to the full conversation to hear Diane share her passion for developing close-knit technical teams. Diane and her colleagues are widely recognized for their contribution to partner enablement, and especially the high-quality deep dive webinars for Pega experts. Without further ado, here's my conversation with Diane Smith-Knowles. Diane, welcome.
Oh, thank you, Alex. Thank you for having me.
I'm delighted to have you on the show. Innovation Tales focuses on the human side of digital transformation. And I think your team and yourself, you do too, isn't it?
This is true. Yes. We're all about making sure that the people behind the technology are learning and coming up to speed, knowing that even though Pega is built for change, people not so much.
Let's try and give our audience a bit of context.
Sure.
What is your team's remit and what are the methods you use?
So our mission is to ensure that the CLSA community, myself, Bram Smith, and Dion Lammers, we're a global team, that our LSA audience is kept apprised of what's the latest in the product. Not only that, but also understanding that not all LSAs are on projects that are necessarily on the latest version of Pega. So there's a lot of making sure that we cover topics that are not only the latest from Pega, but are we're understanding where people are at on their projects right now. And we know as consultants and delivering applications for our clients, that's a full-time job plus. Yeah. And not everybody has the opportunity to step out and learn new things. Oh, great, there's a great new academy mission. Let me go take that. We don't often have that luxury of time. So what the need that we're trying to fulfill is giving a forum for the LSAs to come together. We try to do monthly. That doesn't always happen, but frequently, multiple times a year, the opportunity to come together and learn what the latest and greatest that Pega has to offer, answer questions. That's a really big part of what we do and what we find important. Key, in fact, are our questions from our audience, because that's what's going to tell us where people have gaps and what people want to learn about. And we're really passionate about that. We and at Pega World, we were so excited to have yourself approach our booth and
well, I follow these webinars, I think, every time, and some of the questions come from me. So I highly advise people who are interested in where the technology is at the moment to follow those webinars. But when I was at Pega, the team didn't exist. This team didn't exist. There was instructor-led courses, fast-track bootcamp. Eventually, I think we started running the CLSA immersion programs, which both you and I managed at different times. So do you have like a origin story to share for your team?
Oh, an origin story. So I was in Pega Consulting. And before that, that's just a long time ago, ancient history. So I'll leave that behind. I'll start from the Pega Consulting point in time. I was in the field delivering Pega projects just like you. And I got the opportunity to help out with the lead system architect curriculum at the time, Terry Murphy. So great story. I just ran into him 10 minutes ago. Well, maybe not 10 minutes, an hour ago. And we had a nice connect. But I started teaching that class, started teaching the lead system architect class. And what was so gratifying as I look back is to see where people have taken their careers. Some have really gone on to deepen their experience within Pega as principal system architects. Some have gone on to start their own companies, just everything in between. And that's just been hugely gratifying to me. but that's where I started in with, as far as a community, LSA community. I did a little bit of a detour into enablement. So I was developing curriculum for a while, but then found my way back to the LSA community by way of the partner organization. And we started right during COVID when we lost contact with everybody, when everybody lost contact with everybody, starting up the Lead System Architect webinar series as a way to connect with our audience and bring them. While the rest of the world shut down, we were still building software, and our teams needed to know about that. So that's kind of from 2012 to today, and that's where we are.
Amazing. So out of difficulty
yes,
was born a format that I think is, again, I find it extremely useful. And I think you've already alluded to some of the challenges that you and your team face and we in the LSA community face. So definitely not having a lot of time. That's definitely something that I'm sure a lot of people will recognize. But what else is, making your job interesting? Why is it not just as straightforward as publishing just a bunch of pages on the technology?
Right. So part of that, I think, is, as I mentioned, the opportunity to interact and ask questions. And again, kind of in this post-COVID era, we're now finally coming back around to having in-person events. Diane on my team was part of, at a customer site, I did a Constellation event a couple months ago now. And the opportunity to interact and not just with the LSA webinar, it's great that we have our Q&A panel. And again, we really prize those questions. We covet those questions and make sure that our audience gets answers to those questions. So it's not just a one-way pushing out of information from Pega to our community. We really want to hear back the questions that people have and talk to people face to face. And now that we have this opportunity just to start coming together post-COVID, we're looking to do more of those type of events.
Oh, that's great. And I think you already mentioned that, it's Pega's built for change, but the people not necessarily. What did you mean by that?
So I don't know about you, but I like comfort. I like knowing that I have a certain set of expertise, and regardless of where I go, I know that, I know how to set up a case type. I know how to do a data model. I know I've worked with Pega for a long time. I won't say how many years, but for a long time. And there's comfort in that, and there's comfort in knowing that when you go and you talk to somebody, you're really confident that you're going to have the answer. With the changes to the technology, and not just Pega, any technology, the world moves on, and then we have to change with it. And sometimes that change can be really painful and hard, especially when you don't have time. When am I going to learn how to do, learn this new thing, whatever it is, whether it's something in the Pega product or anything else that we have to change. Learn how to do, learn how to pick up a new skill, and that's hard. I've heard that the people don't change until the pain of staying the same becomes greater than the pain of changing.
Okay,
right?
Yeah.
Because otherwise, you're just going to stay in that comfort zone and until you're actually pushed. But then there are people who really love new stuff and jump right into it. My belief, my observation anyway, is I don't think that's the majority. I think people love their expertise and want to hang on to that as long as they can.
Yeah.
Echoes of Innovation.
So then in the second segment, we use storytelling to bring our audience authentic insights. But
Okay.
I always advise my guests to use discretion with
Okay.
names and specifics,
Sure.
to honor confidentiality agreements, and also to respect the privacy of the individuals involved. Bearing that in mind, however, let's dive deeper. Maybe you have a story you can share that would illustrate that tension that you've mentioned, staying in comfort versus being up to speed. That a story that would help our audience understand where the difficulties come from.
Okay. Well, I can tell you recently we've been preparing a series called Squashing Constellation Myths, and we've delivered that a couple of times. This is a very recent example. And I've been learning, just along with the rest of our ecosystem, all that Constellation has to offer. And it all sounds great in theory, and you look at all the architecture diagrams and like, yes, this is the right technical decision to make for Pega. But I still wasn't, in my own mind, convinced, right? Like, well, I like my action sets. I like being able to style up the UI in the way that I want to. And I could see I could sense and understand how, if you're on a project and the client is asking you to change a button, you've been able to, back to I'm comfortable with my expertise. Yeah, I can do that in a split second, no problem.
I guess there's been quite a stir, I think is the word, in the last 2 years now. At least that's the time frame, maybe not from the technology perspective, but from the what people are saying. I've seen, or I felt more not resentment, but anxiety.
Anxiety,
I think.
Yes.
A lot of anxiety in the last 2 years from the practitioners who indeed are concerned that they might not be able to deliver the same type of service that they have been able to deliver because the technology is changing.
Right.
So how does, from where you stand, you engage with almost all the CLSAs, all of the experts, is that also something that you've been observing?
Absolutely. A lot of just consternation of, I need to get this delivered to my client in 2 weeks, and I am struggling mightily with this particular technology, and just being patient as I'm working with in my partner delivery role, working with our partners and explaining, first of all, why is this, because they're coming at us a little bit about this. Why is this hard? And it's once you catch how Constellation renders the UI and the fact that the data model is going to drive and render, Pega's doing the work for you. You just kind of have to let go. And I had to reach that point myself as I was preparing to do one of these, we call them myth busting or myth squashing.
That's a good format.
Yes, yeah. So here are the 5 myths about Constellation, and we're going to go through and systematically squash each of those. So as I was preparing for that myself, I was going through one of the demo exercises that my colleague Bram had brought to bear, and it clicked for me. Oh, I see why the data model is so key here in making sure that the data types are well thought out and of the right type, because Constellation is providing that UI for you. I don't have to go and configure a search and select or a modal or anything that, my old way, the way that I like and was stuck with, would have told me to do my instincts. I had to kind of go against my instincts a little bit. But then once I had that see the light moment, it all just kind of clicked. And I said, I see the benefits of this.
What's the first moment when they actually are challenged? What usually brings that about?
Yeah, usually it's I have to deliver this user story by the end of the sprint, or the client is asking me to provide a button, and in Constellation, I don't see how to do that. I don't see if there's even a way to do that. And the steps, recognizing what is the client asking you to do, agreeing upon that, and then seeing if there's a way that the product will support what you're asking to do without having to go and hand code some HTML or JavaScript or whatever it is.
So it starts with a practical challenge.
Correct.
It's interesting that it doesn't start with like the webinars when a new feature comes out and you start looking at what's possible and what's not at that point. I guess most people, like you said, just don't have time to play around with a new piece of tech until they actually have to deliver. Is that like a fair statement?
That is a fair statement. It's not until you're presented in your day-to-day with some task or a challenge that all of a sudden the way that you've provisioned maybe half a day to get this thing done, and then you go and you try to set it up or configure it, and I can't get this to work, and that's when the anxiety sets in, right? And I can feel it. I can feel the anxiety, and when our partners or our community comes to us and says, "I'm trying to do this and I can't get this to work," and then going through that process of A, understanding what it is they're trying to accomplish, then B, finding out, does the product support what you're trying to do, but maybe in a different way. And I think that's where the discomfort comes as well, is our ecosystem, our delivery teams aren't used to going back and saying, well, let's look at this in a different way. And here's why we should be looking at this in a different way, because it's going to help with future upgradability. It's going to help with the speed of your application, but we have to think about this in a slightly different way. And that's where the challenge comes. And I think that's where we need to go as an ecosystem to not just educate on the technical, the mechanics of the product, but delivering that message of let's think about this problem in a little different way. And there are ways to again, we're kind of focusing on Constellation here, but to configure to meet a very specific client need, but let's see what the product can do for us before we start going down this path. It's funny with UI, it's what everybody sees, right? And everybody gravitates to the UI. And
I agree. Although to me, this it's now in the product, and it's now something that pretty much you have to do. But to me, this was the best practice all along.
Right.
With this specific topic. I know it's just an example.
Yeah.
But there was always this tension.
Right.
Do we build a custom UI because somebody is asking us for it? Or do we become creative and we broaden our understanding of the problem. We, instead of fixating on the solution, we kind of spend time in the problem space. And, that's kind of what, in my view, should have been happening all along.
Right.
Now it's part of the product, so now it's unavoidable.
Right.
So what would you say indicates that in one case, the person is going to feel comfortable with learning how to do it in a different way versus the situations where, there's going to be more frustration?
It's hard to know. Everybody's different, right? Everybody has a different capacity for learning. And before they say, help, I need, send an email to my team or put it in a ticket even, and it might come back around to us. So in addition to the, have you checked out these resources? Have you watched this? Just walking through, I think, with a simple example with somebody, and I know this isn't necessarily scalable, but I find that this to be most effective, that let's take 10 minutes to walk through an example of what you're trying to achieve. And as you mentioned, take another crack at, let's look at the problem itself, and maybe there's another way to solve it. It's hard to you can't remove somebody's anxiety from them, if only, right? But you can walk with them through that time and show them a different way.
One of the predictors, what I'm hearing, is that it's the access they have to somebody who can bring them along.
Yes. Yes. And that's really something that we're trying to work on with the community at large. Our mission, we don't want to just be constantly, it's Bram, Dion, and Diane again, and they're going to talk to us about something we've already heard about. We want the community to engage, and what's really been helpful is the LinkedIn space to get some of that conversation going. And if the community has ideas on things to cover, we want to know so that we can facilitate those conversations. And we'd love to get to the point where it's not just us doing these webinars. It's the community coming in. Hey, can I be a guest? I have a really good story to tell about success with cloud migration. I don't know.
So it sounds like Constellation wasn't just a unique example, but that kind of adoption challenge is something that is recurrent.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Remember, people are not built for change so much. We adapt, but not without a lot of grousing and complaining along the way. I don't know. Again, I'll speak for myself. I can't speak for everybody, but it's what I've seen.
I agree, yes. Yeah. So before we move on to the next segment, if you found this tale of innovation inspiring, please like and subscribe to help us reach a wider audience.
Blueprints of Innovation.
So Diane, in this second segment, it's a little bit shorter. We focus on tools and methods that we might have mentioned previously. So let's go through the acronym first that we've mentioned.
Okay.
Of course, for us, it's obvious. What is a CLSA?
Certified Lead System Architect, CLSA.
And what does that represent in the Pega space?
That is the highest technical certification that we offer. It represents years, although not necessarily, but often years of experience with Pega, developing with Pega. It proves by way of certification that the person who holds that certification has deep understanding of not only how to implement Pega, but how to architect solutions for Pega.
Great. And now let's expand this to what is the CLSA community?
The CLSA community is at least 2,000 people and ever growing of Pega professionals who, a lot of them, most of them have invested their careers in Pega. And that community shares ideas with one another, brings to bear very years of well thought out opinions, some of which are very strongly held and sometimes need to be adjusted, maybe. But really, they are the top tier Pega architects and implementation leads out in the ecosystem.
Perfect. And so your team, as you described, serves this community. And what are the methods? Let's say you've mentioned the webinars. Can you maybe elaborate on that a little bit more?
Sure. So we started the webinar series during COVID as a means to reach out to this audience. One other thing I should add to the CLSA definition is that this group of folks has quite a bit of influence over our clients and our delivery teams, and so they're very well respected, and we want to make sure that they have all of the information and tools and have a channel, right? I'll get back to why we started this webinar series, that they have a channel to ask questions, to get clarification, to bring their opinions.
And then the last term I think that we ought to define is simply Constellation. We've mentioned it in this story. What is Constellation?
Constellation is Pega's UI architecture, React-based, no longer section-based. This is what we're moving forward with as a company. And it's a altogether different UI architecture than we've had in previous versions, all based on React. And if I say any more than that, I'll probably start getting into way too much detail. But
I'll probably just
a modern UI architecture.
Yeah, it's very modern, and I'd say that it's more prescriptive. I think that the idea is to leverage more of the best practices that have been established maybe over the years. Rather than reinventing the wheel as much.
Right, with a prescribed design system that when you look at Constellation, you know it's Pega.
Yes,
yes, very well branded.
Perfect, great.
Innovators Playbook.
So Diane, in this third and final segment, we aim to bring our audience practical advice. You've described the challenges that an individual might go through to stay current. Maybe, we've talked that it's a time investment, that it's also getting out of their comfort zone. Let's unpack this, but from the point of view of a digital transformation leader. They're going to have an organization, a team or several teams helping them deliver. But let's say their teams are struggling staying up to date. What would you recommend to them?
Struggling staying up to date. So I would say taking the time investment to step back and understand, making sure that the delivery teams understand what the vision is for Pega at the organization, using Pega and digital transformation synonymously here. Taking that time to reorient around what it is we're doing, because I think it's very easy to fall into the day-to-day, build this, deliver that, complete this user story, when the teams don't have a reason to change or have a reason to invest in keeping their skills current. If they don't see that, the organization isn't, we're not keeping up with the latest and greatest Pega, why should I take the time out of my day to learn something new? So taking a step back as a team, and this requires backing from leadership and stakeholders, that this is going to be a valuable use of time to reorient around what are we doing? Why are we doing this? The keynote at Pega World from T-Mobile was great. We're talking about we're losing all these customers. What's going on? Let's reorient on loving our customers and what does that mean and that could take a long time. But I think when teams see what the vision is and what the organization is trying to drive to, and it's usually just a very simple statement. Customer love was the T-Mobile. That's what stuck out to me. And then sifting through or making decisions based upon day-to-day decisions based upon what that mission is. Then that's going to drive a whole other set of behaviors. Once you understand what that vision is and what you're driving to, then I see why I need to come up to speed on staying current. What's the latest Pega? What's the tooling and the technology and the feature set that's going to allow us as an organization achieve that mission? And there's a lot of steps between here and there, right? But what's the motivation, right? It's a question of motivation, I think.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is that the first and foremost step is making sure that people have a reason.
Right.
Like the question is why.
Right.
And for them to have an answer that makes them want and commit resources, time to come up to speed. They need to see that this is a longer term investment, that this is not something that will finish, let's say, a project that finishes in 2 months and that's it. Yeah. Right. Mm-hmm. Okay, great. And now let's also maybe spend some time on the human side.
Okay.
Of coaching and mentoring. I think this is how I see it. So you have so much experience with mentoring the community and also working with teams.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of insights can you share with our audience that determine, how they experience their journey?
Okay. I would say personally, first and foremost, what I've found to be most effective is that the person that you're mentoring needs to know that you care about them and you care about them as people, not just their career progression or their technical skills, but I care about Alex. I care about that you as a person first and foremost, and then I care that I see where you can go. I see your potential and how can I help you achieve that, and making sure that you share that drive or that vision of where you see yourself going. And pouring and making that commitment to the person, not just are they going to tick these boxes? Did they get these certifications? Awesome if they do, and I'll offer a hearty congratulations when you do. But I care more about your fulfillment and seeing you achieve what you want to achieve and helping you to get there.
So establishing rapport and having not a transactional view of the mentoring, but a relational view. Right. And why is it not always the case? What are the challenges?
Sometimes people they don't care enough themselves, right? You're trying to help them what you thought they wanted to achieve, but it turns out that they're too comfortable perhaps, and they don't see the need to change or want to learn. And that can be kind of heartbreaking, especially after you've poured into someone for a period of, sometimes years, and to have them walk away or sever a relationship is always hard.
As we're getting close to the interview, are there any final thoughts you'd like to leave our audience with?
Sure. Yeah. Don't be afraid to change. Don't be afraid to learn new things. Just start. Get your hands dirty. One of the biggest blockades, I think, is we particularly with these webinars, with the LSA webinars, it's a lot of taking in, and then we go about our business. We go about our day. But actually putting in the effort to now turn around and build something on your own. Build a project. Like, for example, you'll like this one. I'm going to do a blueprint on podcast. So coming to a theater near you. But that's like a very real example of something that we go through in our day-to-day. This would make a great Pega application. So yes. That's one of my things for next week, I hope, at some point. So the takeaway is don't be afraid to just get your hands dirty, try something new. And with Blueprint, it's so easy to just get your hands in there and build something out, and then take it into the app and evolve it and build it out. The other thing that I'm learning right now is I'm going through a YouTube playlist of AWS, like just AWS services, web services. And I spun up my AWS trial and playing around with that, and just get your hands dirty.
Get your hands dirty.
Get your hands dirty is
that's wonderful.
Yeah,
Thank you
open
very
up
much.
the hood and start tinkering. You might break something, but that's okay.
It's a great way to end.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for coming into the show, Diane.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me, Alex.
It's been a pleasure. That's a wrap for this episode of Innovation Tales. I hope my conversation with Diane inspired you to try the strategies she shared to stay current and help your teams do the same. You'll find the link to the CLSA community webinars in the description. I highly recommend that your experts participate regularly if they aren't doing so already. As always, we have more topics and guests lined up, so stay tuned for more tales of innovation that inspire, challenge, and transform. Until next time, peace.
Thanks for tuning in to Innovation Tales. Get inspired, connect with other practitioners, and approach the digital revolution with confidence. Visit innovation-tales.com for more episodes. See you next time.